Good evening. I now call to order the Duck Planning Board regular meeting, Wednesday, February 8th, 2023, 6:30 p.m. One member of the Planning Board is not able to be with us this evening, and that is Randy Morton. But the meeting is called to order. Are there any public comments? Seeing none, we will move to item number 3 on the agenda, which is new business. 3A, Sub 20-001, application by Allis Holdings, LLC, for a special use permit to expand the Waterfront Shops shopping center by relocating and extending kayak and stand-up paddleboard rental tour business to an existing 100 square foot gazebo in the Village Commercial BC District at 1240 Duck Road, PIN 98-11-76-1465. Joe, would you like to bring this proposal forward?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very summarizing it. Let me just start by noting for the record that this meeting was properly advertised, notices sent to all the adjoining owners and applicants, and posted with the sign in the appropriate time frame. So, just for the record, public notice has been properly given. And you've done a good job of describing this. The reason this application is before you at all is that it involves a 100 square foot expansion to an existing 32,000 plus square foot shopping center. So, relatively minor in the big scheme of things, but it is expanding into an area that was not previously used for retail purposes. And that's why it required an amendment to the existing special use permit. So what you see are the site plan up there in that Sandy's folder is the location of the gazebo. It's directly off of the boardwalk that goes around the Waterfront Shops. So it's just out over the Waterfront Shops right now. The proposal is change the use of this gazebo from an amenity right now, which is really all it's serving the purpose it serves right now, to a retail building. You have a copy in your package of what it would look like. They're not talking about closing this. They remain open for the most part when it's in bad weather. I think drop a tarp, but other than that, it will be open. The business is already on site, so just be relocating to this gazebo, and then the forward space will be rented out to another tenant. So, due to that, the only issue that we really are looking at is parking, and with a relatively modest 100 square foot addition of retail space that requires 1/2 of an additional parking space. As you can see in the calculations in the staff report, there were 177 parking spaces required. at the end, that includes this new space, and the center has 230 parking spaces on site, so plenty to accommodate the proposal. So the only thing we need to look at then as the board is the special use permit criteria. And the first of those is whether it meets all the conditions and specifications of the ordinance, and it appears that it does. And there are no improvements that are needed on site to accommodate. The second is that it does not endanger public health or safety. We did not see any reason why this proposal would cause any issues regarding public health or safety. Third, the use should not substantially injure the value of adjoining properties. And first of all, as mentioned, this is an extremely minor addition. So certainly doesn't change the overall function of the shopping center. And secondly, it's located more toward the middle of the property, where it's unlikely to have any impacts, even visual, on adjoining properties. Fourth, is in harmony with the comprehensive land use plan, and we go into more detail on that, but we do, staff does think that it's consistent with the uses that are allowed and encouraged in the Duck Village character area of the land use plan. So staff is recommending approval of this with 4 conditions for the board's consideration, one of which is that the use of gazebo is subject to KEMA Major Permit 54-21, as well as a subsequent letter of refinement allowing the commercial use of the gazebo. The second condition would be that any new signs must be reviewed and approved under a separate permit. Third, any lighting of the gazebo must be of a low intensity, no more than 1 foot candle, and shielded downward to prevent light spillage to adjoining properties and over the waters of the Currituck Sound. And fourth, the special use permit would expire in 12 months if it's not acted on. And that really is fairly straightforward proposal, and that concludes our staff report. But I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Question, Joe. Is it the staff position that the application is in compliance with the town ordinances?
It is. We've outlined that in the report. And like I said, the only thing that really needed a second look was the parking, and they have more than enough to accommodate the proposal as is.
The applicant.
Good evening, Board. My name is David Clements. I'm an engineer with Bissell Professional Group out of Kitty Hawk, 3512 North Croatan Highway. I am here tonight with the applicant, Jim Braithwaite and Matt Price, their legal counsel, as well as the vendor who owns and operates the existing kayak operation that is proposing to relocate to this new to the existing gazebo. much to add. The staff report and the information in your agenda packet and Joe's explanation of what the proposal is very complete. This is simply a request to add 100 square feet of additional retail use to the existing Waterfront Shops property. It's located within an existing gazebo, so there are no improvements being made, only the addition of an existing of a proposed use, and that's what's requiring a use permit in this case. So with that said, I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys want to have on technical nature.
I think it fits very nicely.
Hearing none. Jim, Matt, any comments? What is the pleasure of the board? Jim?
I don't have any questions.
Is it him?
Yeah.
Just hand back to him. Joe? I thought he was in the meeting.
No, I have no comments. I think it was nicely prepared.
Can we have a motion then to accept?
Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of special use permit 2001 as stated, including the 4 conditions that were provided. I recommend approval of that.
I should have asked, I didn't see any hands from the audience, but before I ask for a second, are there any comments from anyone in the audience concerning this proposal? Seeing none, is there a second motion?
I'll second.
Can we also get confirmation this is consistent with the comprehensive land use plan?
You may remember.
Yes, and I feel that it is in compliance with the special, what was it?
The camera plan.
Comprehensive land use plan.
That it is consistent with the comprehensive land use plan.
I'll second.
Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. It's been approved 4-0. Item number 3B on the agenda. Supplemental use permit 23-002, application by Seabags LLC for a special use permit to establish a formula business in the Village Commercial VC District at the Scarborough Lane Shoppes at 1171 Duck Road, PIN 9859 16 83 96 41. Sandy, Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once again, I'll begin by just noting for the record that this application was properly posted, advertised, and joined the neighborhood. Similar to the last one, this proposal is only coming before you because of the type of business that is located in this area. It is a retail business. This center is already approved for retail business. But what we have is a proposal from a business called Seabags LLC, who has 45 locations nationwide. Due to the fact that they have 45 locations, they are considered a formula business under the town's definition, and therefore it requires special use permit approval. So this would go in the existing Scarborough Lane Shoppes. In your package, you have a video or relocating. So the the back building in there. It would not be creating new space. It would not be expanding new center. There are no improvements that are necessary or proposed as part of this application. So the only reason we get to this before you is because of the fact that it's a formidable business. So we've outlined some previous, there have been a few others, and we actually have identified subsequent to this second report, we identified a third one in the town. And as I said, it's the flip-flop shops. It's also in Scarborough Lane. That is a formidable business. I was unaware of that, but Sandy covered that. So you have a little bit of history on formidable businesses. The only one that was granted that actually went in was at the Frontery in Scarborough Lane Shoppes. And that was back in 2008. So there's not a whole lot of history to this. There was another one approved in 2008, but never went in. If you remember, the Burger King was located in the area where Coastal Cravings was, and there was an application for a KFC Arby's to go in there, but that never actually materialized. So you can see on the plan, it's highlighted in the color drawing, it's up there, the unit where this would go toward the back instead of. And again, in looking at formidable businesses, the goal that the town has set, and that is that we did not want to have buildings that could go, and businesses that could go, and where our community would look like anywhere else. So it's making formidable businesses go through this process to ensure that they're going to be compatible with the surrounding properties. Again, in this instance, we're not talking about a new building being built or corporate colors that are going to be involved. You have a center that is being maintained, and it would still be, the architecture, the colors, exterior, things like that would still be the same as it is today. So we have specific formula business criteria that have to be approved to grant a special use permit. You have information from the applicant, the business owner, on how they feel the business meets these criteria, but the thing, I'll walk through each of these. So the first criteria is for the business to be compatible with surrounding uses, designed and operated in a non-obtrusive manner. As I mentioned, the Scarborough Lane Shoppes maintain a consistent signage and appearance. So while they would be obviously doing some upgrades to the interior for their business, they're not looking at a significant change to the exterior that will be visible. And due to the location of the unit, it's not visible from the street anyway. Second, the formula business would not result in an over-concentration of formula business establishments. There are two, again, we'll correct that. So there are two formula businesses already located in the Scarborough Lane Shoppes. So we don't think that this would be an over-concentration of formula businesses. Pardon me. Third, formula business would promote diversity and variety to ensure a mix of commercial uses. We do note that it would diversify the retail offerings at Scarborough Lane, potentially improving the business environment for all shops within the center by bringing in different people. Fourth, for the business will contribute to the blend of businesses in the community and reflect the seacoast town and beyond. Curiously, this business actually uses repurposed sails in the manufacturers of its products, offering a very unique connection to seacoast history, and so we felt that that was appropriate. Fifth, the formula business would be mutually beneficial and enhance the economic health of the surrounding uses, as it will occupy an existing vacant unit. The proposed business would bring greater vitality to this center, and as I mentioned before, would also diversify the offerings at Scarborough Lane. And you can see some of that. Sandy was scrolling some of the interior of what this is other locations of sea bags. Six, the formula business would contribute to an appropriate balance of business sizes. The unit it's located in is 945 square feet. So we just note that it would not alter the existing size or character of this shopping center or the surrounding area. Seventh, the proposed use is consistent with the unique character of the town and would preserve the distinctive visual appearance. We note that sea bags would be offering unique products not found elsewhere in the town and provide a distinctive shopping experience for people. And the last one is that the proposed intensity of use of the site. So there are two parts of this. One, that the size not exceed 3,000 square feet. As I mentioned, it's 945, so it complies with that. And any street-facing frontage be limited to 50 feet. As I mentioned before, and as you note on that plan, the unit has no street frontage. It faces interior to the property and does not have visibility from outside the shopping center. So we felt that both of those were met. So staff is recommending approval as the proposal appears consistent with town standards for formula businesses. We are asking the board to consider 3 conditions. First, any signage or other exterior building improvements utilizing the corporate logo or identification must be designed and maintained in a manner consistent with other businesses in the Scarborough Lane Shops. Secondly, that any new signs must be reviewed and approved under a separate permit. And third, that the permit would expire in 12 months from the date of approval if it's not acted upon. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my presentation, but I'd be glad to answer any questions that the board has.
Joe, is it the staff's position that the application, that the proposal is consistent with the town ordinances?
It appears that it is, yes.
Any other questions to Joe or Sandy, staff? Is the applicant here? Would the applicant come forward? State your name and address, please.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Paul Gorey. My business address is 25 Custom House Wharf, Portland, Maine. My home address, 130 Granite Street, Auburn, Maine. I'm the Vice President of Retail Stores for Seabags. I've been with Seabags 5 years. And one of the unique things about Seabags, our founding was on a working waterfront in Portland, Maine in 1999. One of the unique things about that, it's an authentic seacoast community. So when I sought out this location, one of the first things I looked at was the town itself and what it stood for and the uniqueness and the charm and it being an authentic seacoast community. One of the things we do is we make totes, handbags, and accessories from recycled sailboat sails. So those small seacoast communities where there may be sailing present or an interest for boating is vital to us because we actually take sales and trade into our stores where a customer can bring a sailboat sail in and trade it for product right in the store. So that's our lifeline of our business, and that's what keeps us going. So opening in small, authentic seacoast communities is vital to what we do as a business. So your town fits that criteria. The other appeal, and I appreciate your requirement for a special use permit, is we tend to avoid shopping centers or environments where there's a plethora of national chains. We feel we're still very small, even though we have 45 locations. We operate in, most of the communities are very small, populations of 1,000, and they expand in the summer months to 20, 50,000 and beyond with tourists. We like to become part of the community, not only as a business, but it ties into our founding principles, being green in principle and practice in all we do, being members of the community and such where not only do we create jobs, but we provide support in the community. And the importance of fitting in and blending into a community and being part of it is who we are, our DNA and our makeup. So we appreciate the opportunity to come before you and thank the other members of the board and members of the council. I also want to thank Mr. Hurd and Ms. Cross for their support and Matt and Jeff for all the support they provide. May I answer any questions, sir?
Just sort of as an aside, do you have shops in Bar Harbor, Booth Bay, Harbor, Camden?
We sure do.
And do you know how long you've had them there?
Yeah, those stores, we started opening stores, and Camden has probably been there 6 years, Booth Bay Harbor 3 years, Bar Harbor 3 years, so they're all relatively new.
Thank you. Other questions from the board? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Jim, Matt, any comments? Any comments of anyone in the audience? Discussion. Joe?
Either I missed it or you didn't mention anything. There's no effect on the parking with this, is there?
There are no improvements necessary or proposed as
Okay.
part of the
I didn't think so.
application. They've avoided enough parking And again, what's being proposed is a retail use in a retail space, so they've already accommodated for it
Right.
with the parking.
Okay, nothing special there. Thank you. I have nothing else, Mr. Chairman.
Any further comments, questions from members of the board?
I think it was a good presentation, and I'm satisfied that it's consistent with the other uses and, what's going on in there.
Is there, hearing no further comments, is there a motion?
I'll make that motion. Motion to accept it as presented by Joe Hurd. And,
Consistency,
yeah, I'm sorry.
and finding consistency with the
Yes,
comprehensive.
find it
land use plan.
consistent with the blah, blah.
And can I offer a friendly amendment that we accept the proposal that's been?
You sure
the
can.
application? Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Any questions on the motion? Hearing none? No, Joe made the motion. He accepted my friendly amendment, which
He
is.
just started talking, he didn't have to.
We weren't accepting Joe's presentation, we were accepting the application. Any further comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. It's passed 4-0.
Very
Thank you.
When do you plan to open?
If we get all approvals, we'll be open the third week in March.
Okay. Gonna have to keep my kid on a short leash here. She's gonna be in there.
I've seen stuff, but it ain't cheap.
No, it's not, James.
The next item on our agenda is old business. Item number 4A on the written agenda. Ordinance 23-01, text amendment to the definition of lot coverage found in section 156.002 of the Zoning Ordinance to permit alternative ground cover materials such as pervious, pavers, artificial turf, and other surfaces. Discussion, Joe?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, what I'd like to do, you'll note we have a single staff report for both items 4A and 4B. We put them as separate ordinances because they deal with separate parts of the ordinance. And there was a general agreement on one of these at the last meeting and not as much on the other, so we wanted, the second one needs maybe more discussion. So I'd like to cover both of them at one time, if I could, and then but we do ask the board to vote on these separately as separate application items. So this is a follow-up to the discussion we had most recently at the board's meeting in November, the last meeting, and we discussed lot coverage, and basically the intent of this is to clarify when people could use alternative surfaces and have it not count for lot coverage. So the first ordinance, we cover some of the history in the staff report for you, but the first ordinance, number 23-01, is, as the chairman mentioned, is the definition of lot coverage. So what's being proposed there, consistent with the board's discussion at your last meeting, are a few things, but really there's one minor amendment on the first page that was just put in to clarify when we talk about peat systems. we're talking about wastewater. So that was just a point of clarification that was missing from the original ordinance. The real change that the board was dealing with is on the second page of that ordinance. We're proposing to add a section that states that ground cover materials that are entirely permeable, that could include, we wanted to leave it open-ended enough to be flexible, but they would include things like pervious pavers, artificial turf, but other surfaces as well would not be included in the calculation of lot coverage. However, those materials must be either certified by an engineer to be 100% permeable or installed according to the manufacturer's specifications, including the base and surface. And they did want to note in there that it would be the responsibility of the property owner to document installation consistent with those manufacturer standards. So that is what we're adding in there based on the board's conversation at the last meeting. Any questions regarding that proposed change?
We have discussed this, I think, at a couple of meetings.
Yes.
That's not to curtail in a discussion, but I think this, I'm sorry, we've discussed this at a couple of meetings, not to curtail the conversation in any manner, but are there further comments to the discussions we've had at previous meetings?
Mr. Chairman, the only comment I would have, and I only noticed it because they added wastewater after the word peat. It might be better to strike peat and just use the word innovative wastewater systems, so impervious components of innovative wastewater systems, because that would just cover more above grade tanks and modules or whatever.
And staff would agree to that. That's a good suggestion.
Repeat that, Mark, so what we are making a change.
Strike the word peat and just put innovative wastewater systems, because peat is one particular type of innovative wastewater system.
The only other thing I might note that Joe didn't necessarily touch on, if you look back into our actual definitions, lot coverage is shown as one large paragraph, which is somewhat cumbersome. He's enumerated the different items, so it's a little bit more easy to read, and hopefully that'll help with lay people trying to determine what's coverage and what's not.
I don't know that we discussed it at any previous meeting, but is this consistent with or different from the way other towns on the Outer Banks have handled it?
We presented all of the different towns at the November meeting. I did.
That's okay.
Would be Nag's Head. Nag's Head was pretty.
The only one that was more restrictive is that Carter County requires an engineer certification in all cases. We're proposing that as an option, but if it's installed according to manufacturer's specifications, they don't need to pay an engineer to certify.
And who makes that judgment?
Who makes?
They have a choice.
It's the applicant.
I mean, that it's in compliance with the manufacturer's certification.
Well, they would provide us with those specifications, and then they are required to provide documentation that it was installed according to that. So we would have a record of that.
Okay.
So it's not an interpretation, they have to document that it does comply.
Just to give you an example, say you're putting in artificial turf and it calls for 8 inches of sub-base 57 rock. They would call us and say, we've installed all rock, and by the way, here's an invoice for that rock for this quantity. They would be the ways that we would document it. They can always also be done with pictures. There's a variety of ways that we would work with applicants or contractors, owners,
Great.
to document it.
Tim?
So, yeah, I went back over the last minutes, and we talked about, Joe's comments were the importance that they were being sold per manufacturer specifications, and there should be some means of verifying the sub-base. And then it went on to say we also should have some way that the maintenance standards are put in place for the various types of products. And it doesn't seem to me like we have very much or any ability, much ability to verify any of this. We're accepting the property owner's word or verification that he put in the product correctly, and other than just taking his word or Sandy just said looking at invoices or something, we don't go back, the town is not going back and verifying that it's done correctly.
No, the town is. She just threw those out as some examples.
No, we would go either inspect in person or get photographs of what they've done.
Okay.
We can do photograph inspections.
Yeah.
Okay.
And where it says that,
And we also have a provision there for maintenance. Now that, I get that becomes more problematic. We are not going to go back onto people's properties to look at maintenance. But if an issue comes up, this says they're required to maintain it according to those specifications. So if they have not, we have the authority to enforce that.
Okay.
But we're not going to do that proactively.
Does it need to be stated that the town of Duck has the authority to go inspect, or,
We don't.
I'm sorry?
We don't.
Okay.
We cannot give ourselves that authority legally. We're not invited onto the property. No, we can ask, but if we're not invited onto the property, we can't just go on the property.
Well, it just seems like a big difference between having, and I know we discussed this, that, it's expensive and all, but it's a big difference between having a licensed engineering, certifying it, and just saying, the property owner saying, I've done it.
That's not what that says. It says they have to provide documentation, sufficient documentation of that the installation was conducted. We're not just, they can't just say, yeah, we installed it. We're going to ask them for documentation, some of which Sandy suggested. Those are options. There could be other things.
Okay.
We would require them to provide us with some documentation that it was installed properly.
Okay.
To press just a little further on Tim's comment, as opposed to just providing documentation, don't we want a certification from somebody if it's nobody but the homeowner?
Well,
in general, like the building inspector, for example, is inspecting buildings to see that they meet code, and he inspects that when he can see it. And we call in a structural engineer when we want to do something that the code doesn't deal with. So the structural engineer will make individual calculations for that individual case. I think that this is consistent with that in the sense that if someone installs it per the manufacturer's instructions and can document that, then it meets what the manufacturer has had the product tested to perform to, that standard, whether it be 100% permeability, or in a lot of cases with pavers, they're a percentage, like they're 60% permeable or something, if they're installed correctly, and that can be documented. So I think that we're on pretty good footing because we're leaving the option to use an engineer when the instructions for installation won't do, because various components need to come together to create a stormwater installation. We've had good luck, I think, documenting these things. Even though the standard hasn't been clear in the ordinance, we have courtesy inspections and say, you know, come look at the gravel or whatever when it's being installed, and it hasn't been a problem to date. So I think that that's the only clarification I can offer from practice, is that when you're installing it by the book, the certification is pretty easy to document for any layperson or a building professional like the building inspector or planning staff. It's when you deviate from the instructions because you're combining components to do something that you need the help of a design professional.
My question was slightly different. In the absence of a design professional, don't we want certification by someone, even if it's the homeowner?
Well, if they're not qualified to certify, in other words, I would not accept certification from a homeowner as a reasonable approach to compliance with this.
Well, let's change certification from a compliance statement. It seems as though is it Nag's Head that has and looks for certification from a design professional, and Currituck County does. And
Basically, the way Currituck runs it is if you want to install turf, artificial turf, or pavers, and you don't want it to count against coverage, you've got to have it engineered.
right.
They have to have an engineer certification for it. What we're saying is, you can do that, or you can follow the manufacturer's specifications and provide us with documentation that has been completed. With that being said, if the documentation they're providing is insufficient, we can certainly require them to go back and get engineering.
But aren't we providing an exemption from the existing lot coverage specs because of this?
The whole point of us bringing this to you is because right now we're kind of just dealing with it and winging it. We don't normally require people, we don't count artificial turf as coverage when the specs say that it's permeable. But should we was the question that was posed. Other communities some communities don't know how to deal with it, aren't touching it. Do we want to be that community, or do we want to be a community that's going to deal with it because it's becoming prevalent? People are putting in more and more artificial turf, and there are no standards in our guidelines to follow.
To me, it seems like this might be a good place to start, and if staff sees abuses moving forward or has problems, we could always come back and require the engineer to document it. But since we don't have any clarification in the ordinance now, and as Sandy said, a lot of people are putting turf in, we haven't seen, to my knowledge, you correct me if I'm wrong, but we haven't seen instances where it doesn't appear to be performing the way it's intended, meaning there's not situations where there's a bunch of runoff on other properties or into the street. So
In In my experience, because I'm putting in turf in my yard, if done properly, you would expect that you're going to have more storage capacity for stormwater. But we don't know that because we don't know what's going underneath these products on a regular basis. We're just saying, if you meet the standard, you're good. The specifications, the product specifications, we're not asking for anything more than that at this point. We're just trying to make sure that we have some kind of consistent level because different products may have different levels. Some may require 4 inches, some may require 8 inches. We've got these new gator mats out now that some engineers are raving about being, the end-all be-all, and they're 100% permeable. 100% permeable. So we just want to make sure that we have some kind of standard to make sure things are being installed properly so that they are actually meeting the specifications that they're designed to. And I have to agree with Mark 100%. If this ends up being too wishy-washy, you can always come back and make it stronger. But without having anything on the books right now, it's kind of hard.
Kind of in that same line, is there any guidelines, and I know you've got different types of material, but we're talking about if they're not maintained properly in some relatively short period of time, they become, useless as far as being permeable. Are we going to have any kind of, like annually, the property owner has got to verify to the town that maintenance has been done on it, and that we could go look at it if we wanted to see that maintenance was done? Because from what I understand, some of these products, if you don't maintain them, you might as well just, not just forget about it.
That is not part of this proposal, but that's an interesting comment. I mean, that adds another layer of, cost and responsibility on the owner, but it does allow the town to document compliance as far as maintenance goes.
My expectation would be that aside from perhaps permeable concrete, by the time properly installed permeable pavement or artificial turf begins to become impervious, it will be failing.
It will be what?
It will be failing. And Mark can correct me if I'm wrong. But there's a lifespan for this stuff. Like artificial turf, 5 to 7 years. After 5 to 7 years, has all the gravel that's below it sunk into the ground and been saturated with sediment that's making it impermeable, you're probably replacing your turf, which means you're probably replacing your rock. Same would go for permeable pavers, I would think, that at some point pavers are going to start to fail. Would you agree, Mark?
Yeah, in my experience, pavers and turf, what we're comparing zero lot coverage to is clean sand. So the only thing getting into pavers and turf substrate would be sand, and we haven't seen it affect its permeability. I can't speak to the permeable concrete. Right, it can get impacted with sand in a different way than open gravel because the passageways are a lot tighter. Does the town, we have some permeable concrete. Is there how do you handle the maintenance on that?
We only, in the past 2 years, started vacuuming it twice a year. So I can noticeably see a difference in the permeable pavement that we installed back in 2010 versus what we have recently installed. They're all being maintained at the same level now, but the permeable pavement that was installed many years ago I do not believe it was being maintained to the level that we are now. And so the likelihood that will have to be replaced sooner than the others is probable. So, without some kind of maintenance plan for permeable concrete, I can absolutely see where you would have issues with that being impervious at some level.
Right. Well, I'm raising some of these questions because when we discussed it last meeting, we said that there should be a maintenance standard put in place for those types of products that would be required to be maintained with regard to their permeability. And so I'm raising the issue, should we put something in this proposal now? We talked about it at the last meeting, and I don't know the answer, but I'm just raising the question.
Well, it requires a maintenance standard consistent with the manufacturer's specifications. The other half of the maintenance issue is literally just, we'll call it bandwidth. We don't have enough staff to go around chasing this stuff, period. Even, we just don't have that. So I don't think that the answer is putting this on staff to follow up with owners on an annual basis to ensure that, but what we're trying to do is at least put the burden of that on the property owner so that if we run into an issue, we can go back and say, well, you haven't been maintaining it, and you need to. So that's the other half of the maintenance question, is our ability to effectively follow up on it.
This is not for nothing, said another way. The homeowner is requesting an exception from the lot maintenance provisions. And, I certainly hear you, and I wouldn't take the step of saying that an engineer has to give us a cert. But it does seem that there should be, in my view, some type of statement from someone, if not an engineer or design professional, the homeowner, who's saying what you are bringing forward. Because otherwise, it really does leave the burden on the town and the staff to go out to 3 years later when his neighbor is having some stormwater problems, and you say, well, we looked at some photographs and we looked at some invoices. I would think that it's in the interest of the town to take a step beyond that. And to me, a statement of compliance from the homeowner, that's the minimum step, as opposed to having an engineer's certification or design professional's certification.
So there's two things that we're talking about, though. The initial install, and then the annual maintenance.
This does not approach, I'm not talking about the maintenance.
Oh, you're just talking about the install, because Tim you're still talking about
Well,
maintenance.
But he's raised both
Or
issues.
both. So,
Both, but another issue we discussed at the last meeting was having some kind of a maintenance requirement where the property owner in some way has got to verify that they're maintaining that product on an ongoing basis. And I'm just trying to say, without overburdening the staff, could you say something like, and I don't know what the standard is, but annually or biannually, you need to verify, send in a document or certification that you have done the maintenance. At least we've got that on file. If you don't require it, it's going to be a lot less likely that the property owner is going to do it. But if you say this is important and you got to be doing it, and you send in a verification every year or every 2 years or whatever, and at least you can go back periodically and say you haven't done that, do it and certify it.
I remember some years ago that there was a requirement when I installed a burglar system in my home.
I'm sorry, what kind
A
of?
burglar system?
Yeah, we have
ADA.
an alarm permit,
And
yes.
an alarm permit. And I had to provide that to the town. And annually, there was a follow-up that I had to go back to ADT and get them to do something that I had to send in to the town. Again, this is not for nothing. This is because the homeowner is asking for an exception to the usual lot coverage standards. And, you know, the person who's likely to suffer the most is his next door neighbor if, you know, if we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing by granting this exception. So it seems to me a little, just a small requirement to to have the homeowner provide statement, certification, something, and that he's going to maintain, it consistent with the manufacturer's.
So would you accept the homeowner's certification for both things? If it were on the homeowner to send in to the town annually, you know, maintenance was performed.
I personally would. I don't know if it satisfies Tim's concern, because the question then
Step in the right
arises.
direction, at least, you know, we're saying maintain it.
Okay.
So yes, I would, you know, that's
It's something that the town can rely on by giving this homeowner
not
an exception.
perfect, but it's a step in the right direction. It's at least making an attempt to have the property owner maintain the product that we're giving him an exception for.
So do we add that to number 6? And do we need to add it in 2 places? One for the initial certification and one for certification of maintenance? Or do we somehow attach it to the, see, Joe has included, it's the responsibility of the property owner to provide sufficient documentation of installation consistent with the manufacturer's standards. So in some way, sufficient documentation provided by the owner, your concern is already in there. Do we?
Except that I'm saying that the homeowner ought to say to the town that this has been installed consistent with the as opposed to, I mean, I don't see the town going to the manufacturer. It's not, in fact, going to go to the but it can have some conversation, you know, 2 years from now, because the next door neighbor, their butter is complaining to the town about stormwater runoff in his property.
Chairman Kofit, are you entertaining comments from the public on this subject?
Yes.
I believe,
Well, I want us to finish it first.
Okay.
We haven't gotten there yet.
all right. And I believe Joe wants to.
Yeah, I believe that, so if I understand Chairman Schofield, his comment relates to having some sort of actual certification, not just, you know, not just documentation of, you know, of it, but that the owner certifies that it was installed properly and that they intend to maintain it according to the manufacturer's specification. Is that a correct summary?
Exactly, Joe.
Okay.
So I have a follow-up question on that. Would that certification entail not only a signature from the owner for future maintenance, but perhaps if they're using a landscaper to install the product, are you wanting a signature from the installer as well?
But that would not be a part of my suggestion. It's up to the homeowner to do that.
So would we just add then after documentation, like, and an affidavit or something?
Or some type of statement of certification. I wouldn't necessarily say an affidavit, but some statement of certification.
So it could be worded somewhere along the lines of the property owner to provide sufficient documentation and certify installation and maintenance consistent with manufacturer standards.
That would satisfy my concern. Tim, is that?
And it could be, Joe, since evidently the products vary, like I'm making this up, but one product says maintain it annually and another one might say every 3 years. They could, in their certification, say, and I agree to maintain it once every 2 years, as the manufacturer said, and at least we would know.
Yeah, well, that's why I would hesitate to use a defined time frame, because some products, it's every 6 months. If you're using permeable concrete, it might be every other year
Understand.
or something else.
Well,
And that way, by saying according to manufacturer specifications, it covers that whole gamut.
Yeah.
If you get what I'm saying.
I think that's a reasonable addition.
Joe, any comments? Sandy, is there a town council view?
We're looking at now on special use permits and conditional use permits to make sure they're followed up on. Is this something you'd like to maybe add to that?
Yes. I would, assuming that we pass this tonight, I would say yes. Joe? Yes. Assuming that we pass this tonight, I would say yes.
We better pass it then. You've been yakking enough on it.
Any comments from anyone in the audience concerning this matter?
Just as a practicing engineer in all the towns.
State your
Dave-
name and address, please.
David Klebitz, engineer with Bissell Professional Group, Kitty Hawk, 3512 North Croatan Highway. I just wanted to add some insight to what you guys, I think, have just achieved. So the way that it's done in Currituck County, they actually put a certification on the site plan that the owner signs saying that they are going to install and maintain the stormwater improvements per this approved plan. Now that's preemptive, that's before the installation ever happens. That's a certification on the plan that allows them to do what they want to do. What I hear you guys saying is that, in a way it's better, that you would do this after the construction. You're asking, rather they sign a certification at the site plan approval stage, they're gonna sign a certification maybe at the CO stage that we have installed this per the manufacturer's recommendation and we are going to maintain it in accordance with the manufacturer. So it's a little bit different the way that Currituck does it, but it makes sense. So I don't know if that helps, but I just wanted to add.
Thank you, David.
My 2 cents.
Thank you. Again, I mean, it's not for nothing. I mean, the homeowner is asking for an exception here, and there ought to be something that we're looking at to make the town and its neighbors feel comfortable with respect to stormwater runoff.
Would this, because it's in the definition of lot coverage, it'll apply even when the homeowner's not asking for something special, right? Like if they want to install turf and they have 25% lot coverage, they're still going to have to jump through these hoops because this is in the definition.
We will likely need to add something in our permit conditions if we know that turf is being proposed, just so they are aware prior to running into CO issues and understanding, hey, we have to do this, or not understanding they have to do this. So, I mean, I like Dave's comment about, how Currituck puts it up front. Part of that is good because you know what you're getting yourself into. We can do it on the front end and the back end. It doesn't matter so long as we have something clearly defined as to what we're doing.
Procedurally speaking, though, should we not put it in the second part of the ordinance that is dealing only with the credit for lot coverage over 30% as opposed to in the definitions?
I think because of that, it should appear where they're asking for the exception also.
So maybe the language Sandy's talking about that enumerates how we'll document it would go in the ordinance 23-02 part.
But Mark, they wouldn't, there may be cases where they're getting this exception to stay under the 30%. So it needs to be in the original 30%.
May or may not. It may or may not have anything to do with 30%.
I understand, but
It
I
may
think
just be,
Mark was
I want to
saying.
put in turf, is that going to count as coverage?
Okay,
They
I
may
thought-
not even be close to 30%.
I understand, but I thought Mark was saying, just put it in the, if you're asking for the 35% waiver.
No, I think that we changed the definition in number 6, as we've discussed. But then what Dave has brought up, was the documentation, and Sandy's agreed that maybe it needs to be on the front end and the back end. So that, I think, should be added to the 2302. Am I right in that it would go in there, or would it go in another section of the ordinance that we're not discussing tonight?
I would certainly agree with what you just said, Mark, because I think at the point that someone is asking for a waiver or an exception from the lot coverage requirements, they ought to understand what the town wants from them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to go into the other section because it deals with lot coverage too. So it doesn't need to go there. The question is whether, and again, I would prefer that we act on one of these and then talk about the other.
Okay.
Rather than confusing that issue, right now, but we can see if there's a value in adding it into there too.
I don't see where we need it in O2,
Okay.
because we're creating a standard in lot coverage, and that's going to apply regardless of whether you're applying for that 5% credit or not.
Okay. So then, since it sounds like we're headed towards moving this forward, do we need to finalize the language we're going to use there? If we're going to...
Hang on, just rethinking, hang on.
If we can do it tonight quickly, I would say yes. Or you get the gist of the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to be able to pull Joe's comment about the language that we'll add to number 6 and tweak that. We can certainly circulate it if you like for final approval.
But Mark might have.
Let's do that.
No, that works.
Let's do it.
I thought
Yeah.
you had pretty much had a proposal that we could.
I did, but I'm nervous when put on the spot.
Just to jump over to O2, to 2302 as well. In this, it has subsurface drainage systems, and you could certainly probably use the gravel below pavers and the gravel below turf and consider that to be subsurface drainage systems. And Dave's over there nodding his head, so I feel pretty comfortable that, we've got this piece from O1 covered in O2 already, so.
Okay.
What's your pleasure? I mean, you want us to try to put this down tonight or bring it back, or you're comfortable?
We have a recording, so we can quote what the language Joe used to add for, the certification piece. We'll circulate it around. I would, if Joe's comfortable with this, I would suggest a motion to recommend approval with amendments discussed tonight, pending final circulation.
Tim, you comfortable?
The only thing that I was, if we can, looking at it, when we're asking the property owner to certify that they had this pavers installed, and they're saying, and it will be done with manufacturer standards, and maintaining the surface according to the manufacturer's specification. If they could say in there what that is, like once every year, once every 2 years, because each product that is going to be, that they're dealing with could be different. But
My expectation is we will attach the product specifications
right.
to any certification, so there's no question as to what those specifications are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Will that work for you?
As long as we're going to all this effort, he or she is going to say, i.e., 3 years, 4 years, or provide the specifications, because otherwise, y'all don't have a clue what this property owner is supposed to be doing.
But they're attaching it to the
We're
certification.
attaching.
Okay,
yeah.
well, I don't know that it says that, but
Now,
It says sufficient documentation, and I can tell you from personal experience that if Sandy and Joe don't feel that something's sufficiently documented, they'll just keep asking for more documentation until they're satisfied.
well, that's good. I mean, there's probably a lot done that
Not like that, are we?
we're not aware of, but that's good. I just don't want the guy to say, yep, I'll do it according to specifications, maintaining according to specifications, and you've been pointing out that the different products probably have different requirements. So I just wanted that to be known however we obtain it. Okay.
You good with that?
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mark, would you offer a motion?
Sure. Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve text amendment ordinance 23-01, subject to final revisions to be furnished by staff prior to presentation to council.
Would you accept as a friendly amendment the second part of that ordinance 23-02?
I think we're supposed to do that separately.
Oh,
So we haven't talked about the pools yet.
Might I suggest that you reference item number 6?
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
yes.
all going to be done right in this one
the-
paragraph, I think.
Yes, the change from item number 1, innovative wastewater systems, and the wording in number 6.
And then you find it's consistent with the comprehensive land use plan?
And I find that it's consistent with the comprehensive land use plan. I thought that was only for use permits, for ordinances also, huh?
It's for everything.
Okay.
if we agree.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. Mark's motion has been moved and properly second. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved 4-0.
Oh, do we vote on it?
Yeah, we got to vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, nay. The motion is approved.
Okay.
Now, do you want us to do,
Mr. Chairman, the second item was, there was a little more discussion, the general concept of what we discussed. We had pretty good consensus around that at the November meeting. This was another item that was brought up by Mr. Murray, and it had to do with this. This is now dealing with the section that's giving people 5% extra, okay? So this is only dealing with that, not lot coverage in general. And he had proposed that the surface area of swimming pools be excluded from that calculation if a state licensed professional engineer certifies that a one and a half inch rainfall event, the pool would not overflow. So that is the proposed change to that section based on his comments at the last meeting. Obviously, we'll let him talk about it a little bit, but from the staff standpoint, I did have a couple things to add. So presently, the town of Duck considers swimming pools to be lot coverage, okay? Not every community does that, but we have always done that. So the thought is that even though they hold water, that water isn't released, it's in a bowl, and it's not released to the surrounding area to dissipate. So our comment is that, by pulling these out of the stormwater management calculations, giving that extra 5%, it's a contradiction to that standard that we don't, presently we don't allow that to be pulled out for general lot coverage. So in this instance, though, we'd be pulling it out to allow the 5%. And whether there's some inconsistency there, and certainly there would be a perception that we'd be allowing an increased development intensity by doing that. So this one is a little different in our eyes and worthy of further discussion by the board.
That's a nice explanation, Joe. I think I raised at the last meeting, you probably got 5, 6 to 8 inches of additional water that's going to be retained before you get to the point that the swimming pool is going to overflow and become an issue.
I just brought it up because of CAMA's consideration of pool water and other municipalities, but I mean, it's not something I care deeply about. I just thought that since an engineer would be certifying that it could, that you had the headroom there, and since I know from pool ownership that it is a net water user because of evaporation, in the event that an engineer was going to take a look at a site plan, I thought it was worth adding that as a tool in the toolbox. But like I said, it's not important to me. So if the rest of the board doesn't agree,
Joseph? No. Tim?
I was going to ask Mark a question. Would this, if someone was exactly at 35%, or they were worried about it, would this allow them to go, by not counting the pool, would this allow them to go greater than the 35%? Or is it that this is used for his calculations in creating a stormwater management plan?
So I don't think that any engineer, although the one that's present could correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that they would use the pool as a place to put stormwater. But my point is that if it's not going to overflow in the rain event that's being analyzed, then by definition, it's not behaving like lot coverage does. Lot coverage causes runoff. If it's not going to overflow, it won't cause any runoff. That's the only reason I brought it up.
What I was asking, though, is if it was 500 square feet, could that possibly, if you eliminated that, allow the homeowner to go over 35% of lot coverage?
The practical effect is going to be yes.
Right, but it wouldn't be considered lot coverage if the engineer certified that it wasn't. But I guess it is space that's usable for something else then. Right. However, in the instance that it's space that is usable for something else, a design professional is certifying that a 1.5 inch design storm event will not cause any runoff on that property. So it seems like a moot point to me.
I'll go back to the November meeting when one of the primary questions we asked was, are we looking at regulating because of intensity of development, or is it driven by stormwater? So that speaks to Joe's last paragraph in the staff report that, adding this clause could result in the perception of allowing increased development intensity, because you could feasibly have 35% lot coverage plus that pool, and people are going to look at it and say, there's a lot on that lot. So that's why this is a much larger discussion, I think.
Well,
And that's what I was trying to say, it could go over the 35%.
but I think my point is, if you have 30% lot coverage and you're on top of a hill and your runoff all goes to your neighbor's property anyway. No, yeah, and all your runoff goes to the south. Now, if you're in a situation where a compliant 30% lot coverage development would have no stormwater infiltration, best management practice installations. Your stormwater goes where it goes, you're at 30%, the town doesn't have anything to say about it. When you then engage an engineer, we are giving someone a 5% credit, which is not that significant of a credit when compared to other municipalities, for their guarantee that when it rains 1.5 inches, no stormwater will leave their property. So, yeah, if a pool's 400 square feet, they may get 400 more square feet of coverage, but I feel like the town gets a dividend in stormwater retention that they don't get from any lot necessarily that it has 30% lot coverage isn't otherwise compliant.
But you could also look at that same situation where the lot's already at 30% and they want to put in a 400 square foot pool and a wood deck around it, and that's your increased development. So you're given that 35% lot coverage, but you're also, the intensity of development is much larger because now you have a recreational piece that's added to a lot that was already at 30%.
Sure, but it's been certified that it won't create a stormwater problem.
So it goes back to the question, intensity of development versus stormwater.
I think both. I think we'll all agree that it impacts both.
Yeah.
I don't see that it's necessarily bad, but I think we'll all agree that it impacts both. What's your pleasure?
Like I said, it's not real important to me, so if we don't have two other people agree, leave it in there? Leave it. Okay.
To do what?
Joe's suggestion is leave it in here. That's your suggestion.
Your suggestion was what, Joe? I didn't hear it.
I didn't say anything, I just said 2 words.
I didn't hear what you said.
It's not a...
Thank you, Mr. Blakaitis, for helping.
There, there's 4 words.
Okay, how about if we just table this? Is that okay?
If
Yes,
it
that's one
pleases
word.
you, Chairman Cofield, I can certainly bring back what the other communities do with regard to pool water.
That's fine. Do you need a action on that, Sandy, or is this sufficient? Joe?
If we were to say it, but yeah, you need to say
Okay.
just make the motion,
Is there a motion to table?
Mr. Cofield, I'll make a motion to table this item.
Second.
Did you say second, Tim? Okay. It's been moved and properly second that item 4B
Tabled.
is tabled. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor say yes.
Yes.
All in favor, no. It passes 4-0. Item 5 on the agenda, approval of minutes. Minutes having been sent out in advance, is there a motion to,
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the minutes as submitted.
I second.
it's been moved and properly second that the minutes be approved as presented. Any questions on the, is there a question on the motion? Any questions on the motion? Hearing none, the minutes are approved as presented. 4-0.
Aye.
All in favor, aye.
Aye, aye, aye.
Opposed, nay. It's been approved 4-0. Thank you, Sandy. Item 6, and you're going to help out a lot there too, right?
You want me to do this, or you want to do it? All right, so there was no action relative to the planning board at the town council meeting.
Thank you for the
right.
staff report.
Project updates, two quick ones.
Okay.
We just recently bid out the trail improvements between Blue Heron and Waxwing. There were some delays due to some easement issues. We did have our pre-bid meeting on Tuesday, and the bid opening will be February 17th. We are very cautiously optimistic that we will be able to get that section of trail completed before the season gets started. We also, in anticipation of the budget discussions, put out to bid our landscaping for the trail, the village sidewalks, and the park, as well as trash detail in the park, with the hopes of getting some numbers that we can factor into the budget. That contract would not be effective until the 1st of January 2024, but it's relevant now.
The other thing we'd add is that the VHB, our engineering contractors for the project, are going to be offering a more detailed update on the neighborhood stormwater study. And that's next week on the 15th at the annual retreat for council. And they're scheduled in the morning at 10:30, I believe. So if you're interested in that project and hearing the latest on that, as well as the brick project, and they're going to give, VHB's going to give a comprehensive update on that. So please, you're all invited to attend to learn more about what's going on with the town.
And then one last item, we do have another special use permit that's been received, so we will have a March meeting. Plan on that, and I will try and have information to bring back to you about other communities and how they treat pools.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Joe. Item 7, board comments. Any board comments? I'll offer one. I am sorry, as I have expressed to him personally, that Tim is not standing for reappointment to the board. I think Tim has made a valuable contribution to the board over a number of years, and I've expressed to him personally, and I'd just like to say publicly, I'm sorry to see that he's not standing for reappointment.
Thank you.
Any further board comments?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Hearing none. Is there a motion for adjournment?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Yes.
It's been moved and properly second. Discussion, hearing none. We are adjourned at 8:02 p.m. Thank you.
For such a heavy